All right, so Matt, the other day, Ashley and I were doing laundry in the laundry room, and I decided I was going to carry a stack of folded laundry back to the room, right?
Mhm.
But as I'm doing it, I trip and I fall. And Ashley just stood there and watched it all unfold. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
Man, I'm doing really well.
Good.
Man, I had a great weekend this past weekend. It was, well, by the time you're hearing this, it's been old, but it was Father's Day this weekend. I had all 5 of my kids together, which is a rarity with them being, having 3 adult children, young adult children, but adults nonetheless. They work, they go to school, they do stuff. So getting all 5 of them together at once was just a real pleasure. And it was awesome. I sent you a picture of my Father's Day gift, which blew me away. They totally surprised me. Actually had to have my parents order it so I wouldn't see it.
Oh, that's cool.
On the Amazon thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And speaking of gifts, I like you said, it's going to be late, a lot later than Father's Day. But since we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and tell you. Ashley and Michael got me a ticket for me and a ticket for Ashley. Michael can't go because he's under 21.
Yeah.
But there is a whiskey company in Fort Worth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what you do is you go, I think it's Oak and Eden or something like that. You go there and you have a whiskey tasting. So you taste the different types of whiskey and the different additions and all that. And then you get to build your own personalized bottle with the additions that you want. And it has a little spiral piece of wood that you drop in the bottle that ages.
Oh, yeah.
And then they print your label, put your name on it. So you've got a personalized bottle of whiskey when you leave. And that was my Father's Day gift. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
I love this because I don't drink much, but when I drink, it's whiskey.
Yeah.
Whiskey or bourbon. And they know me.
I've seen those little spiral things.
Yeah.
That I've not tried it, but I've seen them, and it's like they add the, that whatever flavor profile that particular wood would add.
White oak, cherry, whatever. Yeah.
Man, that's really cool.
So I'm looking forward to doing that. It'll be later this month that we do it because, believe it or not, that's a popular place, and it was hard to get a sooner reservation. But
I bet it is. I bet it is really popular.
Before we get into it, we'll say go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. You can find a list of shows that we're happy to be associated with. You can hear my beagle in the background shaking and scratching.
I thought I heard something.
So Nash is saying hi, apparently, in the beagle way. But go check out Podbelly at podbelly.com. Also, check out our sponsors. We say this, we haven't had many sponsors here lately. Last sponsor was Me Undies, so go check them out. I'm wearing my Me Undies. I'm sure Matt is too.
Oh, yeah.
I've got on my little counting sheep ones I would show you, but this is a PG show, so I'll save that for a Patreon.
I've got a good one about Me Undies. So this weekend I had on the neon hearts.
Yep.
Okay. And I was sitting down. We were out just hanging out on the patio at my mom and dad's, and my shorts had come up, and Miranda goes, "Oh my God, I have that same underwear." She got the same pattern in her Me Undies. So
that's funny. Yeah. Ashley bought Michael and I some matching pairs. So what I had to do last time I did laundry is I went and wrote my initials in the waistband of my underwear, which I haven't done in decades.
Yeah.
Since I had siblings living in the house with me. But because he's almost to the same size I am, and it's hard to tell.
Me and Brooks, we deal with that all the time.
So I'm like, okay, since we got the same pattern, I'm going to write my initials in my underwear. So, but while you're doing that, also go over to patreon.com/graveyard tales, sign up to become a patron. We've got 3 different levels, and you get a bonus episode a week, no matter what level you're on. If we run an ad, our $5 and $10 members get an ad-free version of that show, audio and video. And then our $10 patrons, they get all of that, plus they get our new show that we started. Can we still call it a new show, Matt?
I don't know. 20 episodes in. I don't know. It's not so new anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. So our second show.
It'll be new to you.
It'll be new to you. There you go. But our $10 a month get our second show, Side Quest, where we do, if you've ever wanted to hear Matt and I do something that is not anything related to Graveyard Tales, go check that out.
That's right.
We recently have done weird pictures, weird videos. We're going to be doing more of those. Hey, Adam found some crazy videos. Let's watch them and get Matt's thoughts on them. Matt did one on crazy jobs.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a place that Matt and I, we just try to mess with the other one, get the other one to be in disbelief or to laugh and talk a lot of trash. And it is more blue comedy than what's on here. So, but it is a comedy show. So go over there and check it out. Sign up, become a $10 patron if you're interested in that. So, Matt, that's all the housekeeping I got. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
All right. So tonight, we're coming back to Tennessee, and there's a lot of places that have Civil War history, and there's hauntings associated with it. We did a show years ago on essentially the whole town of Gettysburg and how much activity is there, all stemming from, the bloodshed from the U.S. Civil War.
Right.
So tonight we're going to look at Shiloh Memorial Park in Tennessee, where one of the bloodiest battles occurred of the Civil War, and all of the haunting activity that goes on inside this park.
Right.
Which you would immediately think, oh, I bet people have seen Confederate soldiers or Union soldiers, or they just weird feelings and stuff like that. Oh yeah. But there's so much more.
Right.
There is a wide array of paranormal activity that goes on in this park. And we're gonna talk about just about all of it and share some personal experiences from visitors who either have lived near and around the park or were just visiting, and the things they experienced, which that always blows me away when somebody just visits. They're passing through, they're a Civil War buff, and they realize, hey, that's not too far away from me. And they go and visit and something crazy happens.
Right.
It's like, if you got a one shot at it and something weird happens to you there, that kind of tells you, hey, this stuff happens frequently.
Yeah.
So, but of course, with any haunted site like this, the history, it's all about the history for this place. So,
right.
So Adam's going to share the history of that area and Shiloh Memorial Park.
Right. And as we always say, go check the sources down at the bottom of the show notes. You can find where we found all the information. You can keep checking it out if you want to dive further, because there is always more to learn than what Matt and I can cover. So go down there, bottom of the show notes, you can see all of the sources where we got all of this information and, figure out some of the other details, the key little points that we weren't able to cover, but we're going to try to touch on all of the major points here for you. Now, Shiloh National Park is in Shiloh, Tennessee. It's in Hardin County, Tennessee. So if you know where that is, I know where Hardin County is. I don't think I've ever been in to the Shiloh National Memorial Park, though.
I've not ever been to the park. I've been near it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went to school in Memphis and, traveling around in the Southwest Tennessee.
Yeah.
I've been near it, but I never really went through it. Of course, that was at a time in my life when I was like, you want to go to the bar or you want to go and take a tour of the
learn history,
Civil War battlefield?
Yeah.
They're like, are you kidding me?
Yep.
Nowadays,
mm-hmm.
like,
I'm with you, dude. I'm the same exact way. There was opportunities that I had to go check things out that I wished I had, or I did go check out with family members, but didn't pay as much attention to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, God, I want to go back there because now I would care and now I would pay attention. But the park was established in 1894 to preserve the scene of the first major battle that was in the Western theater of the Civil War. And Shiloh, like Matt said, one of the bloodiest battles, but it's also considered one of the best preserved battlefields in the nation. So I think that's cool that you think of Gettysburg and stuff as a big, and it is. But Shiloh is considered one of the best preserved battle parks. You can see how it was at the time if you're into that thing. Now, Shiloh National Military Park, it has historic sites in it, like the battlefield of Shiloh, the battlefield of Corinth, and the National Cemetery, all within this park. And there's a lot of others that we'll touch on too, but those are just three of the bigger areas there. So while we're going through it, remember, it also has a cemetery within this national park.
Right.
So, and God only knows who all is buried there.
Oh, yeah. And apparently it's not just military folks.
Right. Now, this is a quote from a Union veteran. He said, "No soldier who took part in the 2 days engagement at Shiloh ever spoiled for a fight. We wanted a square, stand-up fight and got all we wanted."
Yeah.
And when you look into the battle, they got all they wanted and more. They got a heaping helping of battle, and they all wanted it, apparently. They were like, we want a good fight. And boy, did they get a good fight.
I can't even fathom the mentality there. Not that you want to fight for what you believe in, but I mean, so many of these people were watching family die, in battle right next to them.
Yeah.
I mean, how much emotion it's one thing for people to die in battle, and we've talked about this a lot, but, with the U.S. Civil War, I mean, families were wiped out.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, all these brothers, these sons, in a lot of cases, fathers were out there fighting together and dying.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
On both sides.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's beyond the emotion that war would bring. It's heightened, at least, that in my opinion, it would be because of that.
Right. And I think that adds to that thought of we wanted a fight because they have watched family members and friends, and you talk to service members in recent wars, like just the GWAT and stuff. If they saw one of their friends get killed in battle, you had one of two options. You either shut down or You were wanting to get back out there and get revenge.
Yeah.
You were ready to go mow some people down for what they did to your friend. And at time of the Civil War, like you said, you had family members fighting next to each other.
Right.
Nowadays, we try not to put family members in the same battle because we learned from this, it can wipe out a whole family.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to, you've got two brothers fighting in the same war. Nowadays, they don't want to put you in the same regiment in case your regiment gets hit. Well, then they're sending both of y'all home to the parents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm sure the fuel of, I just watched brother, father get killed, I'm ready to stick it to him, was heightened. Now, this is from battlefields.org, and it talks about the Battle of Shiloh. And it says the Battle of Shiloh ran from April 6th to April 7th, 1862, and it's also known as the Battle of Pittsburgh Landing. Well, it allowed Union troops to penetrate the Confederate interior. So the carnage was unprecedented. And they said the human toll being the greatest of any war on the American continent up to that date. So think about that, Matt. We went through the battle for the American independence on our soil. But this one battle, 2-day battle, had the highest body count of any battle on American soil up to that point. Crazy.
Yeah.
Now, April 6th at daybreak, 3 corps of Confederate infantry storm out of the woods and they sweep into the southernmost Federal camps, catching Grant's men unprepared. So intense fighting centered around Shiloh Church, which we'll talk about, as the Confederates sweep the Union line from that area. Well, despite heavy fire on their position, Union troops counterattack, but slowly lose ground and fall back northeast toward Pittsburgh Landing. Throughout the morning, Confederate brigades forced Grant's troops into defensive positions at Shiloh Church, the Peach Orchard, 2 that we're going to talk about, Water Oaks Pond, and a treacherous thicket of oaks that they said was named the Hornet's Nest by some fortunate survivors of that battle there. But that afternoon, while leading attack on the left end of the Union's Hornet's Nest line, Johnston is shot in the right knee. Well, the bullet severs an artery and the commander bleeds to death. Well, General Pierre G.T. Beauregard is appointed the new Confederate commander. Believing his army victorious, Beauregard calls a halt to the attacks as darkness approaches. He's unaware that overnight, Buell arrives with reinforcements for Grant. So the Union Army now has nearly 54,000 men near Pittsburgh Landing and outnumbers Beauregard's army of around 30,000. On April 7th, Grant's army launches their attack at 6 a.m. Beauregard immediately orders a counterattack. The Confederates are ultimately forced to fall back and regroup along that line. So Beauregard orders a second counterattack, which halts the Federals' advance but ultimately ends in a stalemate. The timber-clads USS Tyler and USS Lexington provides naval artillery support to Grant's left flank from the Tennessee River. So think about that. You got USS ships in the Tennessee River, and they're firing upon this area to help Grant out. But think about the artillery that's raining down on these men. And it's accurate, but it's not as accurate as it is now. So I'm sure some Union troops were killed as well just from this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, about 3 p.m., Beauregard realizes he is outnumbered and, having already suffered tremendous casualties, retreats toward Corinth. On April 8th, Grant dispatches Brigadier General William T. Sherman and Brigadier General Thomas J. Wood to ascertain the Confederates' position. At Fallen Timbers, 6 miles south of the battlefield, they encounter rebel cavalry under Colonel Nathan Bedford Forrest. So Forrest charges into the Federals ahead of his troops and is shot by Federal infantry at point-blank range. Although he will later require difficult surgery to remove the life-threatening bullet, Forrest's reckless aggression pays off, and Federal forces flee in the direction of Pittsburgh Landing, allowing the Confederates to escape. Now, the loss of life on both sides at Shiloh, which Shiloh, ironically, in Hebrew means place of peace. So, kind of not a Shiloh at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But the loss of life on both sides was staggering, they say. But there were other sad consequences of that battle as well. They say Johnston's death was a damaging blow to Confederate morale, particularly the President Jefferson Davis, who held Johnston high in personal and professional esteem. And after the war, Davis wrote, "When Sidney Johnston fell, it was the turning point of our fate, for we had no other hand to take up his work in the West," end quote. Grant, though victorious, was vilified in the press after being caught unprepared at Pittsburgh Landing on April 6th. So critics called for him to be dismissed, but Abraham Lincoln defended his general, declaring, quote, "I can't spare this man. He fights," end quote. So Corinth fell to the Union by the end of May, allowing Grant to focus on gaining control of the Mississippi River. Now, there were estimated 23,746 total casualties from this one battle alone.
Good night.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, the breakdown is there were 13,047 Union casualties. So 1,745 of them were killed, 8,408 were wounded, and 2,885 were missing or captured. But let's think about it this way. Those wounded, during that time, most of them probably died anyway. If it was a severe enough wound where they weren't dead, so they were considered wounded, but they died later, to me, that's still I would say, KIA, even though it wasn't counted. So I'd say there's a lot more killed than they've got marked there. Now, there were 10,669 Confederate casualties. There was 1,728 killed, so almost the exact same number.
Mm-hmm.
8,012 wounded, so very similar, but 959 that were missing or captured. So, and I'll still say those wounded probably ended up dying.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've talked about that before too, all these haunted places that were turned into at the time they were turned into Civil War hospitals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the amputations that would have to occur.
Yep.
That the people that just they knew, we have no way to help this person.
Right.
They were wounded in battle, but they're gonna essentially convalesce here until they pass. I mean, there was nothing else that could be done. Just try to keep them as comfortable as possible.
Right. That's it. Now, let's look at the Shiloh National Military Park. Now, Congress established the park on December 27th, 1894, to commemorate the April 6th through 7th, 1862 battle that raged around Shiloh Church and Pittsburgh Landing. Now, like we said, it was the largest engagement in the Mississippi Valley campaign during the Civil War. And originally, under the War Department, Shiloh National Military Park was transferred to the National Park Service in the Department of the Interior in 1933. Currently, the park has over 5,200 acres, and the Corinth Battlefield Unit encompasses roughly 240 acres, but they say it has a potential for a total of 800 acres. So, if they wanted to get the other 560 acres, then that would finish out what that Corinth battlefield was.
Yeah.
Now, on the first week of April each year, that Shiloh National Park hosts a demonstration. They've got hikes, bike rides, and what they call a spectacular illumination. And every 5th year, there's a reenactment held. Now, on the website, they discuss the 2017 reenactment.
Mm-hmm.
So do the math, and you can figure out 2022 was probably another reenactment. 2027, you'll probably have another reenactment. So,
yeah, and I don't know, I don't see, but 2022 may have been affected by COVID.
That's true.
So there may not have been one at that time. Yeah, I
That's
don't know.
true.
I don't
That's
see
probably
that,
why it's
but
not on there.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, another one would be coming up in a few years.
In 27, yeah.
If
Now-
you, and let me just say this, because I've had friends that did this and got really into it. If you've never experienced, a Civil War reenactment, look, just step out of your comfort zone a little bit and see one.
Mm-hmm.
It is fascinating. I assure you. I know a lot of people think, oh yeah,
That's so stupid.
No, it really isn't. I mean, it is as close to seeing like a video of what it would have been like.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you see a good one,
yeah,
then it's worth it.
yeah. I mean, these guys, they're not just out there goofing off. I mean, they take it serious, and they're actors, yes, but they are historians in a lot of respect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have studied, what happened at this particular battle, what these soldiers dealt with, and they put all that into it so that you can really get a feel for what happened. Because I don't think nowadays people fully grasp how horrible this was.
And how difficult on people.
Yeah, for these soldiers and the conditions they had to deal with. And then you go and they're out there and they potentially saw their brother, die earlier that day.
Right.
I mean, and here they are, their feet are bloody, their clothes are wet, and, they're here.
They've been eating hardtack for 3 weeks. And so that's another thing. Look up what these people...
gives you a look into it.
Right. Look up what these people had to eat, what their provisions were. Look into the conditions of their living, on both sides. The Union and the Confederacy. It was the same thing. It was, unless they raided some storehouse or something, they were eating hardtack, which is basically a yeastless bread that can, I saw, I watch Mike Rowe stuff a lot. Well, I saw a thing where Mike Rowe was out with some Confederate reenactors, and he had been given a piece of hardtack bread from that war that was made during the war, and it was still good. It was not moldy. It was nothing.
Oh my God.
So he took this hardtack, passed it around with the guys that were reenactors, and they all broke a piece off and all ate a piece of hardtack from the Civil War. And they all said, well, it tastes like crap like it always did. Because it's just flour and crap mushed together, and you get this hard biscuit thing that could break teeth, and then they're eating.
Yeah.
The coffee, they didn't have coffee. And
just imagine having to go out and eat this and then fight, and you are just so constipated.
Yeah. Yep.
That's... about to say something. that stuff would turn into concrete in your gut.
Yep.
Can you imagine having to go out and shoot somebody and you've got to crap so bad you can't stand it?
The only plus of getting shot
awful.
at is you might crap your pants, and then it would be relief for you. You're like,
dude, scare me really bad.
Yeah. So. I've been trying to work this out for a week. Can you shoot at me? Don't hit me, but literally scare the poo out of me. Come on.
Guy's over holding his gun trying to pass a sandpaper softball,
Yeah,
he's like, oh.
Pretty much. And they, that old saying that armies march on their stomachs. Well, you had some beleaguered men if they were eating crap like that.
That's right.
So let's real quick look at two places that Matt's going to talk about in the hauntings. Let's look at the Shiloh Church real quick. Now, the Battle of Shiloh takes its name from the church that once stood at this location. It was built in the early 1850s, and the church survived the battle and even served as a hospital directly after the battle. But due to the damage that it endured during the battle, it fell down a few weeks later. Well, today there's a modern church that was built in 1952 that stands in its place, and a replica has been erected next to it. So the replica was completed in 2001, and it's based on historical records. So the church that's actually there isn't the original one, but you can see what it looks like.
Yeah. And we're gonna talk about the old Shiloh Church here in just a little bit. So.
Yep. So another place that you're going to talk about is the Peach Orchard. Now, the battle lines at Shiloh stretched for nearly 3 miles, and it was from Owl Creek in the west to Lick Creek in the east. So I just like the name Lick Creek. I don't know why. It sounds like a place during high school that you'd go and park.
Yeah.
You know?
I was going to say, it sounds dirtier than it is.
Yeah, there's Lookout Point, there's Makeout Creek, and there's Lick Creek. You choose which one you want to go to.
Yeah.
I know where I'm going. So 2/3 of the Confederate troops, they said, were now fighting near Shiloh Church on the west side of the line, while on the east side, near Sarah Bell's Peach Orchard, Confederate General Albert Sidney Johnston was attempting to drive Union soldiers away from the Tennessee River, like we talked about. Johnston, like I said, would be killed near this peach orchard around 2:45 p.m. that day. So a lot of stuff happening at this peach orchard. Now, lined up across the Hamburg-Savannah Road, the Union soldiers were in a very good defensive position, it said, and fighting in that area went on from 10 a.m. until around 3 p.m., with ground being taken by Johnston's men and then given back when confronted with heavy Union artillery fire. Eventually, the Confederates were able to advance to this peach orchard and drive the Union troops back toward Pittsburgh Landing. Now, today, there's monuments and cannon exhibits that stretch across the peach orchard that marks the Union line. So if you look at pictures and you see the cannons sitting there, this is where it's stretched across. Now, it says, while there is a fence around the area, if you want to get a closer look at the cannon or monuments, you are free to walk around anywhere on the battlefield. Now, the cabin located at the Peach Orchard belonged to Mancy George. The location is actually off of Sarah Bell's property. Well, the original cabin was destroyed in the battle. The one that's currently standing there was acquired by George after the battle and moved to this location. So, it's a newer thing, but this cabin is not that new. It was acquired not too long after the battle, and they just kind of picked it up and moved it there, which is amazing that they can move a whole cabin.
I know.
But
all right, so let's talk about some of these different places in the park and what you could potentially experience as a visitor. And one of the most common things is random gunfire. Okay, you just hear it. Visitors to the park have said they hear random gunfire off in the distance. And a lot of people speculate that it's the ghosts of the soldiers that may be trapped on the battlegrounds, and they just kind of, stone tape this battle over and over, and you're hearing the residual sound of the gun and cannon fire. The men who died during these 2 bloody days could still be kind of stalking about. Just, sometimes we've talked about, the spirit doesn't even realize that it's dead. They're just kind of, just replaying over and over and over. Just kind of trapped in this loop. This next one, this one is kind of weird. Okay. The tour stop includes a visit to a small pond where wounded soldiers would gather and try to get a drink for themselves and their horses. Now, on occasion, they say, the water has turned this red color. Okay.
That's crazy.
So they have nicknamed it the Bloody Pond. Some like to believe that this is because the soldiers washed their wounds from fighting and from gunshots. But the pond is also where many men and horses died due to exhaustion and life-threatening injuries. They just, get to water. And just, if I can get to water, I can be okay.
I can clean it off, or I need a drink.
Right. Yeah.
Something.
I can, I'm bleeding out. You have that desire. I want to drink. But according to the park rangers, the pond still turns red during the hottest months of the year because of algae. And we've seen, if you look around the world, there are lakes that will turn different colors, red being one of the most common because of algae.
Right.
I've never seen this myself, other than in photographs. Yeah. I've never seen a body of water that has just become filled with this red algae. I mean, we know it exists, and it does happen other places. But I think the fact that it happens there, it feeds that legend and that story. So it may very well be red algae. I mean, that would be something easy to test. And look, these rangers, they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting story that it does this here. And this would have been where a lot of these soldiers died, or a lot of these soldiers came and washed off those wounds.
Yeah. It's a weird coincidence.
Yeah. So hundreds of years ago, this pond probably did appear red from blood.
Yep. Before they could test for the algae.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Now, along with the gunfire that people report hearing, people have also reported the beating of drums throughout the park. And they like to speculate that the sounds could possibly be coming from one of the youngest boys who was involved in the battle, 11-year-old Johnny Clem. If you're a Civil War buff, you've heard that name, Johnny Clem, before. It said, although there were several young boys fighting in the battle, it was Johnny Clem who survived and remained in the Army until the year 1915.
Wow.
When he died, he was buried at Arlington National Cemetery.
Yeah.
And the sound of the beating drums, they like to say, is the soul of little Johnny Clem beating cadence for the soldiers trapped in the fields. And that's a flowery story, but the sound of the drums is real. I mean, you hear it.
Right. I got a question about that.
Yeah.
And now we've talked about this before, Matt. So it's not like this is the first time I've heard it, but this guy lived for decades past this point.
Mm-hmm.
So people are saying after he died, he went back to this battlefield and then reverted back to being an 11-year-old boy.
Yeah, essentially.
I remember we'd heard some other story about a lady who passed away years later, but went back to the age that her friend passed away at.
Yes.
And they are ghosts together at this young age.
Mm-hmm.
So we've heard it before. It's not like oh, wow, this is wild. But
Yeah.
it is still wild to me that people will say, oh, they passed away at this age, and yet now in death, they're 11 years old again back at this battle.
Yeah.
Would his spirit go back there? I can absolutely see his spirit going back to Shiloh. But I wouldn't think he would revert to 11 again. Maybe.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know how the spirit world works.
Right.
But,
well, I like to kind of, with this story, I like to think that a part of Johnny Clem was left at that battlefield.
Sure.
And
Sure.
that part of him that's there is 11 years old.
Mm.
And if we consider the idea that the negative energy, that the bloodshed there on the grounds holds on to that energy, leaves that stain, that paranormal stain, that that piece of Johnny Clem is not going to be the older
Sure.
soldier that has lived out a long life. It's gonna, the piece that's left there is gonna be that 11-year-old boy that witnessed all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Was right there fighting.
That's true.
So I don't know. You really got to kind of open up your thoughts for something like this. Now they don't necessarily see the apparition of Johnny Clem.
Mm-hmm.
But they're talking about hearing that drum beat. So I think in this case, it was a really great story. About a man who fought and survived as a child and continued to serve his country, and lived a long life. They just kind of tie it in with this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's most likely what it is. But like I said, the sound of the drum beats has been reported.
Right.
So hearing that, and the use of drums and battle horns and all that were common. I mean, there's the old imagery from the Revolutionary War where the drummer and the fife player marching along. They did that.
Yep.
I mean, they did that kind of stuff. So
it was it was used to keep cadence in marching, but it was also used. Some horns used to strike fear.
Yeah.
And to pump your men up. Nowadays, and soldiers, they listen to like Disturbed before they're riding into a battle.
Oh, it's like
as they're going into battle.
Was it the Ride of the Valkyries from Apocalypse Now or whatever, where the helicopters are flying in? Yeah. I mean, so it it gives some emotion, to those soldiers. And
in Vietnam, it was Fortunate Son.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Helicopters flying in, Fortunate Son playing.
Now, gunfire, beating drums, cannon fire is also very common. And Adam mentioned the Hornet's Nest. And the Hornet's Nest is one of the most popular stops on the Shiloh tour. And this location is known to have seen the most fighting during the 2-day battle.
Mm-hmm.
Soldiers from both sides of the conflict charged this field, fighting with any means possible. Guns, cannons, knives, fists, teeth, you name it. If they could fight with it, they were doing it. Visitors have said that they hear the sound of cannons firing throughout the park coming from the direction of where the Hornet's Nest is.
Yeah.
So that's where, Adam was talking about all the cannons lined up and everything. So that, that kind of fits.
Yeah, I can see that because in any other Civil War battlefield we've talked about, cannon fire is so common.
Mm-hmm.
And then with them still having cannons set up there, that's a
Right.
built-in trigger object.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah. Now, keeping with what you can hear, um, the park gets thousands of visitors a year. But so it's not really surprising that guests might hear footsteps throughout the park.
Mm-hmm.
However, many have stated that when they heard footsteps nearby, they were unable to find anyone else in the immediate vicinity. So the sound of leaves rustling in the woods and audible footfalls pounding the ground is an experience that you might not necessarily want to encounter, especially alone in a battleground that could easily be haunted and so much death has occurred around you.
Mm-hmm.
Visitors have suspected that the footsteps could be those of the dead wandering the grounds or making their way across the battlefield. Imagine the sound of all those marching, in cadence, just lasting throughout the centuries, just that stomp. What that sound would have been like. I mean, it just, but you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it from other people that are visiting the park. But there's so many reports of people being out there and being completely alone, or there not being anyone close enough for them to actually be hearing their footsteps.
Right.
Now, let's talk about some of the actual locations. Like Adam mentioned, the old Shiloh Church. Now, as Adam said, the original church on this part of the park was destroyed in the war. But local businesses and citizens, park rangers, and employees of the park donated money and man hours for the rebuilding of the church. They followed the exact plans to ensure that the church was reconstructed as close as possible to its former look. Now, visitors can enter the church and see the pews made of logs from the park. And there is a pulpit with a cross engraved and a fireplace. Now, it has been said that ghosts make themselves known in some of the pictures that tourists take while they're visiting. And so when they go back and look at the photos, there would be strange, white, blurry images in the photos that were not seen when the pictures were taken. And some believe these white images are, spirits, apparitions from the battle and from the church's attendees.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's not, it wasn't so much the building itself, it's the ground that it's on, because they built it in the exact same spot.
And we know that spot was used as a hospital shortly after. And I don't know that I believe it's church attendees, but
right.
I'll go with ghosts from the battle and the ones that either died because they were in the hospital and died, or just died there and have made it to the church. But yeah.
And old churches are common to have that haunted appeal. I mean, you and I, we didn't get to go, but when we visited the Thomas house, there's an old church across the street, and everybody told us, there's a lot of activity over there at night. People pick up a lot of energy over there. So it does. And as I said, in this case, it's not going to be the actual structure that held on to the energy. I would imagine it would have held on to some, but it's the ground. It's ground where all that energy is stored. And, we've seen it with other places. It's like this modern building is haunted. Why? What would have caused this place to be haunted? Well, because there was 200 years ago, there was something that happened on this ground, and that held on to the haunting. So you're seeing that residual sludge reappear because it doesn't necessarily know that the building's gone.
Right.
You take away the building, it doesn't take away the connection to the to the spirit world there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the peach orchard, which Adam also talked about, it's located on the park grounds, and it was reportedly in full bloom when the battle began. So as you're walking these old pathways, you may encounter a ghostly figure walking the roads. Tourists have reported within the park grounds. These sightings of an unknown man recount that his face is indistinguishable, and said the potential apparition disappears after a few minutes. Then he may suddenly reappear out of nowhere. So it's almost like one of these, you get too close and he's gone.
Yeah.
And you walk on past and you turn around and look back, and there he is again. I don't know. There's a similarity to something else here that I can't recall, but it's like you can only see it from when you're far away from it, and when you get closer, you can't see it anymore, and then when you back away, then it reappears. You can see it, so it's similar to that. But I mean, you can imagine you're on this tour, you're walking through this beautiful peach orchard, and you see what you think might be another tourist, and you get closer and he disappears.
Yeah. That would freak you out a little bit. And then he pops up a little bit later down the path, and you're like, what is going on?
But, they say so many people died within that peach orchard, and just the imagery of the bodies, lying under those trees, imagine blood just soaking the ground. They figure that this apparition may be one of those fallen soldiers.
This sounds terrible, but I bet the peaches the following year were amazing because that ground was fertilized so well. But it has to be such a dichotomy to have beautiful peach trees blooming and then this crazy battle raging in and amongst them.
Oh, I know. Yeah. The juxtaposition of war and death over nature and beauty. Yeah. It doesn't even seem like, it doesn't even seem real.
Yeah.
You can't even put that together.
Seems like
a
movie, like a movie plot. But yeah, all I could think about when you were talking about the blood from these soldiers into the ground below the peach trees is I put blood meal on my garden a lot because it adds nutrients to the soil, makes the soil grow better. Blood meal, bone meal that you fertilize with. So those peaches were probably great.
Yeah.
The next year.
Organic matter. I mean,
And the best harvest ever. After the worst battle ever.
That's right. Now, some of the rangers that are employed by the park are provided with on-site housing within the park. Now, throughout the 122 years of the Shiloh National Military Park, there have been stories of doors opening and shutting by themselves, or on calm and otherwise windless days, rangers have reported incidents when previously closed windows were found open and strange breezes were stirring throughout the structures. Now, of course, these houses weren't present during the battle. They were constructed and staffed after the opening of the park. But maybe, again, it's the souls of that still inhabit the fields feel that strangers are intruding on their territory and are letting the people living there know, hey, we're here. We are here. But along with that, screams and moans are also very commonly heard, and visitors report the echoes of unknown screams out in the distance. I mean, so many men were shot or stabbed and just wounded during the battle. I mean, there were countless soldiers in tremendous pain coming from their injuries. So during the war, screams and moans could be heard throughout the woods as the wounded would cry for help or, beg for, that they're going to survive, prayer, I imagine. It was impossible for so many of them to make it to the makeshift medical tents and receive the care that they needed.
Yep.
So a lot of people, they didn't just die instantly. They suffered as their life came to an end. And, that's going to produce a lot of, anguished sounds, screams and moans and stuff. And as people have toured the grounds, they have reported hearing almost like the echoes of these.
Yeah.
Not as if, hey, there's somebody out there, I need to go help them, and there's no one there screaming. They're hearing the echo, like they're hearing something that had already happened.
Which has got to be wild.
Yeah.
Because if you can distinguish that it's like an echo from the past, that it's not right here. Like you said, I don't need to run out and help right now.
Yeah.
But it's like coming in on the wind or something. And like, that's got to be a weird feeling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Completely bizarre. That's one of those things that really gives you chills if you experience that. Now, there is a primitive cabin that is within the park, and there have been reported sightings of a small, barefoot young boy dressed in gray and white clothing climbing down the ladder from the loft and running outside only to vanish without a trace. Now, it has been thought that this boy may have been hiding and in fear for his life during the battle, hiding in the loft. And if his young soul is trapped in the cabin, it's possible that when visitors arrive, he flees his hideout, trying to remain safe. And you're just seeing that repeated over and over again. Now, with the surprising and vast amount of young children who were involved in this particular battle, who knows how many child souls may still be lingering around through the battlefields and throughout some of the rickety cabins and the remains that are still present at Shiloh.
And that's what's crazy to me is the amount of children that were involved in these battles during the Civil War.
Yeah, exactly.
Kids, but I mean 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah. And it's something that, modern American citizens have never experienced is that war and fighting in your own backyard.
Right.
And that's what a lot of people, had to cope with was, the war is coming, onto my farm.
Yeah. My 8-year-old can shoot, so I got to put him out there.
That's right. I don't want to leave. I want to protect my homestead, but there's two armies fighting it out, just less than a mile from my home. Now, there are Indian mounds also found within the park, and they are called the Shiloh Indian Mounds. They are 6 rectangular mounds that served as platforms for the town's important buildings. Now, this is a town that would have existed before Shiloh, well before the Civil War.
Right.
The buildings are believed to have been a council house, religious buildings, and homes for the most significant leaders. These buildings covered 5 of the 6 mounds. The 6th is believed to be the location where the town's leaders and other important people would have been buried. Okay, so, we're essentially talking about a Native American settlement right here.
Right.
Now, visitors report freezing cold gusts of wind, even during the heat of summer, which if you've ever spent summer in Tennessee, cool gusts of wind are not something you experience.
Those don't happen.
It's humid down here. I mean, when you're hot in the summertime here, you're hot. And because of the humidity, the breeze doesn't even help that much. You can get in the shade, and now you're just hot in the shade. Okay? That's just how it is. So feeling a cold burst of air, that would be just out of the question, but very disconcerting if it occurred and you're out in a national park in Tennessee summer.
But knowing me, I mean, even if I knew it was paranormal, I'd go, please do it again.
Yeah, come on. Bring it.
I got my black tourmaline. Just blow through me a few times. I'll be okay.
I'm melting out here. Now, others have spotted colorful orbs that go in and out of the ground and hover above the mounds. And some even say that if you listen carefully, you can hear the hush sound of tribal singing.
That would be freaky.
And there are other places where this is said you can hear. Like you can hear the tribal dances and the drums and so forth. Like especially when the wind blows, which always makes people go, yeah, you're just hearing the wind and it just sounds that way, or it's in your head. You want to hear it. Maybe not, music could be, it has a real emotion to it, so there's energy in music, and if something was going to last, and be held on to by the earth, music would definitely be a part of it.
I agree.
Now, let's talk about some of the personal stories that come out from people that have visited or lived around the park. I pulled these from Reddit, from TripAdvisor, and I tried to get ones that were a little bit different. People had a little bit different experience than the next one, but they were unique in some aspects. So here's the first one. This says, last year at the 150th event, we were on the property of the fallen timbers when we stopped to camp for the night. I had an encounter with an officer who I'm not sure was part of the reenactment of the actual battle. It was during the night fight we were supposed to have where I got separated from the group by command of my officer going through the woods. Now, I may remind you, it's pitch black dark. I can't see my hand in front of my face. And an officer stopped me and told me to turn around or I would alert the Yanks. So that's what I did. When I got back to my company, my he said the commanding officer asked me why I didn't follow through with his orders. So I told him what had happened. And he told me there was no officer over there.
That's weird.
So this guy gets ordered to separate, comes across another officer that says, no, go back. You're going to alert them to our position. Comes back, and his commanding officer is like, what are you doing back here?
Yeah.
And he's like,
told you to go over there.
The officer said, come back. And he was like, there's no officer over there.
Dueling officers here.
Yeah. Now, here's this one. It says, my boyfriend and I went to Shiloh last September, and it was a hot, clear day. We stayed around the Hornet's Nest location for a while, reading the plaques and seeing how far into the woods the line of cannons went. The further into the woods we went, we kept hearing gunfire and a distant boom every once in a while. We thought it was very odd, and we were the only people out at this location at the time. We assumed perhaps there were reenactments going on that day, and that's where the sounds were coming from. So my boyfriend recorded the sounds on his phone, and they picked up when we played them back. When we stopped hearing the sounds, we started out of the woods and made it to the open field where much of the battle had occurred. Still, not a soul but us were out there at this time. But as we proceeded to approach our truck, we heard a loud, distinct yell from a male voice. Immediately, we went back to the visitor center and asked if there were any reenactments going on that day, and the lady said no. But what we had heard was not uncommon in the hornet's nest. Said she finishes up by saying, Shiloh Park has me intrigued now, and I definitely plan to visit again very soon. So, there's the personal experience of the gunfire, the cannon fire, and even a voice. And then they were just kind of like, yeah, they must be doing some reenactments. And then they're like, no, nobody's
later.
out there.
Yeah.
But other people have heard what you heard, so you're not crazy.
Right. And it's cool that they had it recorded too.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because, some of that kind of stuff, it's an either or thing. You don't hear it, but it picks up on a recording, or vice versa. You hear it, but you can't record it.
Right.
This was both. This one says, my great grandma was buried there. Once I was by her grave talking to her when I heard a reply. I thought it was just me at first and continued until I heard it again. I looked around and said, stop. That is very rude. And continued talking. And then I heard humming. I looked around again, but there was no one there. Then I remembered the humming. It was my grandma's. I said my final goodbye and left, and I swear I heard a goodbye when I left.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I said at the top of the show, in that cemetery, it's not just military people that are buried there. So there were regular civilians that were already buried there.
There's probably a lot of town folk there.
But, imagine, all those people buried there. And then here comes this, horrible battle and stirs up all that energy, and it provides some energy for the souls that are buried there.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, when I read these accounts, it just solidifies that there's a lot of energy stored at that location, around the park, in the ground, and it's allowed for these hauntings to occur. Whether it's the gunfire, whether it's the cannons, whether it's the apparitions or the sound of the drums, all that energy is it's stored there, forever, and it replays all of this. And sure, the Bloody Pond and Johnny Clem, they may just be stories that are good historical stories that feed the legend, but it doesn't discount necessarily what people experience when they're there.
Right.
And I would imagine some of it is just that desire, especially if you're a history buff and you make a visit to this park and you think, golly, you're thinking about it. You're thinking about these people that died there, that were fighting either side. And, all the emotion that they must have been having. Yeah, you might kind of internalize the sound of that battle, the gunfire, the moans, the screams of these soldiers. But there's so much is reported, not just by visitors, but by people that live around there, by park rangers. You got to think there's something to it.
Mm-hmm.
That there's an energy there that you just cannot deny.
Yep.
And, we've seen it in other places where so much death occurs in one area over a short amount of time. It builds up that negative sludge that just keeps it there, keeps that spiritual energy right there. And all you have to do is open up and experience it.
Right.
And it's probably not going to come up and just slap you in the face and say, here, I'm I'm a paranormal experience. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
It's here. Go ahead.
If you're not like peaceful and like with the gunfire, if it's off in the distance, you might not even hear it.
Right.
You've got to be paying attention to your surroundings and, be accepting to it. We've talked about this before where we're so distracted by everyday life nowadays that we miss out on a lot of what could be going on.
Yeah.
So I always tell people when somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to this place and it's haunted," or I'm like, "Okay, well, put your phone down. Don't be distracted about what do I need to do tomorrow. Thinking about, oh, what am I gonna get for dinner on the drive home tomorrow?
Yeah.
Just stop thinking about it and be present at that location.
Yeah.
And I think Shiloh is one of those that if you're present at the location and taking it in, you're probably going to experience something.
Yeah. And I would even recommend for visiting somewhere like this, just leave all your paranormal investigating stuff in the car.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't need
your multimeter and stuff won't help.
You don't need it. Just experience it. Like Adam said, put your phone down. Don't just go and experience it, and you'll be amazed at what you'll experience. You don't have to have evidence. It's your experience. Mm-hmm. So whatever happens, it's real for you.
Right.
I tell people all the time, the stuff that I've experienced in my life, I don't expect anybody else to believe. I'll tell the stories for sure, but they're my stories. They're what I experienced. I don't have evidence to show you. I don't have photographs or recordings. But
you're
I don't
lucky because I believe you.
Yeah. I don't have to convince you. I'm just sharing what I experienced. And I think, if you're going to go to a place like Shiloh, that's the attitude you need to approach. If you truly want to experience something special, then go in just with an open mind and open eyes and open ears and just experience it.
Yep. I agree.
But, I love talking about these places. I love reading, about these battles. I mean, yeah, it is terrible, what happened, but, it's a part of our history. And I think we need to embrace it and understand it, so we don't wind up there again.
Right.
We can all come together and live life as a unified country, no matter what. So I really love digging into some of this history, and I know I'm speaking for Adam, but I know he does too. He's a bigger history buff than I am. But let us know what you guys think. Have you visited Shiloh or another Civil War battlefield and had an experience? We would love to know about it. And the best place to tell us is in our Facebook group. We say this a lot, it's a fantastic group because no one's going to make fun of you. No one is going to call you nuts or anything. We just want to hear these great stories. We're all in this group because we've all either had an experience or we want to have an experience or we're interested in it. So, getting in there and sharing it, we would love to hear those stories. Don't forget to go to our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. There you can find links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise. You can listen to the show and you can become a patron. And as Adam said, for our $10 folks, they get what's not so much a new show anymore, Side Quest, which is totally different. It's a lot of fun. It is comedy. It is Adam and I being totally ridiculous in some aspects. But check it out. We think you're really going to enjoy it, especially if you'd like to hear Adam and I talk about something other than ghosts and cryptids and so forth.
Right.
But hey, man, I really enjoyed this one. It's kind of low key, but I really did enjoy it. I hope you did too. And until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.